So I
Mm,
decided to challenge myself to a poem a day, and that's
wow.
how my poetry book kind of got started, was that I just started doing the challenge for myself. And then that's kind of how where my digital art started, because you have to make these little fantastic little slides, that people can look
Yeah.
at. So I started laying on my poetry with little images. Um, and eventually I just had enough for a book.
Fork in the road between thriving and starving artists is where I'm at. I really like your work. I can't eat lights. I need new heights. Just want to make a living doing the work I love. Throw the notion of a starving artist out of the window. Take the elevator down to the ground floor and jump on it some more.
Hello and welcome to the Fork in the Road again. Today I'm speaking with S.R. Chappell or Raquel Chappell. I first met you online a while back in the days of Voice NFT, I think it was, and noticed your amazing collage work and also your illustration work. And we've just been kind of in contact ever since. And recently, so you do collage, you do illustration, you do a bit of AI, you do AI animation, and also AI music. I found out as well from looking at your videos. And you've also got a book, published book of poetry, inked art poetry. And yeah, would you like to, firstly, welcome to the podcast, and would you like to tell me a little bit about your book of poetry?
Well, oddly enough, that's kind of how I started getting into the digital art. Um, I guess it was 2018. I kind of started, well, I kind of became handicapped. Not like, horrible
Hmm.
handicap, but I definitely qualify for handicapped assistance. And I just started wanting something to do with my time, you know?
Hmm.
So, uh, I wrote poetry, and I think my first published poem was age 9. It was
Wow.
a poem I wrote to my mother for Mother's Day, and it was published. Um, but, I just kind of wrote poetry when it was Valentine's Day, birthdays, stuff like that, in a card, homemade card. So
Yeah.
I decided to, and I wrote in my journal a lot of poetry I never shared. Um, and I just started seeing on Instagram like poetry profiles. I was like, I can do this. So I
Mm,
decided to challenge myself to a poem a day. And that's
wow.
how my poetry book kind of got started, was that um, I just started doing the challenge for myself. And then that's kind of how where my digital art started, because you have to make these little fantastic little slides, that people can look
Yeah.
at. So I started laying on my poetry with little images. Um, and eventually I just had enough for a book. And I actually already have another book ready, but I just haven't published it
Oh,
yet.
great. Yeah.
I get a little sidetracked with my art, and it's hard to focus on anything
Mm,
else. Um, but that's just how I got started, and I'd always been writing poetry. I fell in love with poetry at Dr. Seuss. I mean, that was
yep. Nice.
my
Yeah.
introduction. It's most
That's a
people's
pretty good place to
introduction, and then
start.
you go into Shel
Yeah.
Silverstein, and then you get a little more adult taste like Emily Dickinson, and you start. But
Yeah.
yeah, I always just loved poetry. I don't know. Um, Particularly when I was younger, it was about the rhyme. But now I've gotten
Yeah.
into more free flow. Those tend to be a lot of my favorites now. Um,
Yeah.
but I still
Well,
do image prompt poems with my art often. Not all the time, but often.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of in the
And when you
description of
first,
most of my art, you'll see some sort of poetry.
yes, I've seen that. Yeah. Yeah. And when you first published that book, did you have to like, I know when I first started out, making my art public, it was like a massive thing for me. Like, was there any difficulty, in kind of like putting your, like, because it's a very personal thing, writing poetry, and I'm just wondering, how did you feel putting it out into the world, and how was it first responded to straight away?
Yeah, the first poetry I put out was very raw, very emotion oriented. Unlike now, it's kind of just based off the image, a loose story. It's not really
Hmm.
emotional and raw. So yeah, in the beginning, I had a lot of concerned people, family. Are you okay? Was a lot of the
Yeah, yeah.
I really do. I'm kind of it's either really mushy gushy love from me or just the
Hmm.
darkest of dark, and there's kind of no in between unless it's this art
Yeah,
prompting where I kind of tell more of a just a kind of simple story to go with it. But my poetry
yeah,
can be one of the two. It's either so gushy it's like ugh, or it's so
yeah.
dark, it's like, oh my God, what's going on in her head?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
I do like art in that manner more over poetry, is that I don't get as much, are you okay?
Yeah.
Though it would be quite
Because
enticing to my brain to do something that's like, are you okay with my art?
and so your poetry led to you becoming a visual artist. Where did that start? Did it start with collage work or digital work, or what were your first pieces like?
My first pieces were basically just, you know, what do you call stock art that I'd taken and putting on a slide with my poetry. Um, but then I started getting where I wanted more original images on my stuff. So then I
Yeah.
started doing a lot of photo manipulations and collage. Um, and then that just kind
And
of led me to art, which was actually prompted through Instagram, the voice advertisement.
right, okay, yeah.
I was like, which it was funny because I kind of I watched a 60 Minutes, I believe it was, on
Mhm.
Beeple.
Oh yes.
How it was the big, I believe it was 2020 this happened, I believe. And it was kind of on my back burner about
Was
this
that his
guy.
everyday's sale of his everyday's work? Was that one?
Well, he had the first NFT that sold at Sotheby's for like $2
That's the
million.
one, yeah.
dollars. So that made like the news. It made 60 Minutes, and I watched about this, and I thought, wow, just for some digital work that isn't even like tangible hanging on somebody's wall, how can it be valued for this much? It was just so
Yeah.
intriguing to me. Um, and I don't know, it was about 6 months later, I saw this NFT ad, and I was like, oh, these NFTs. And it was advertising that it was like sustainable NFT at green, and I was like, oh, that's up my alley.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
how I got started into the art. Was from my poetry, doing those slides, and then also being on IG and seeing this advertisement for voice. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
Voice
it's
was,
interesting. And for people listening to the podcast, Voice was a NFT platform, a really good one, a really easy to onboard you if you're not tech savvy. Like me, I was always going, oh, well, I got to do a crypto wallet and all this kind of stuff, and it's kind of like a bit all confusing for me. But Voice was a very easy onboarding process. It was supposedly green and clean, and you know, it had a really nice vibe. And it's amazing the amount of artists who I met back on Voice who I still, you know, talk to today. So those
those are my
NFT
closest
platforms,
artist friends are all from Voice practically. I still talk to them, even though we've
yeah,
all kind of gone our own separate ways. Some of us have followed two other platforms but yeah,
yeah,
I've made some pretty good friendships from the Voice platform.
yeah. And how do you find like so now that that's gone and there's like so many other platforms now, looking at your website, you're on so many NFT
I don't
platforms.
even think they're all
Um,
listed. I've got to update that.
I know pretty much if it's an NFT platform, I search for your name and I'll pretty much find you. And I'm just wondering, is that a tactical approach in terms of being able to you know, make enough money with all of them combined, or is it more of a social connection thing for you with other artists? What do you get out of the NFT space at the moment?
Um, well, to me, I I don't think I would be able to sell art otherwise. I'm not one of these people that's going to go set up a booth at the flea market. Um, I really hate sales. And although you
Yeah,
really do have to shill yourself in this market, it's not in person where my social anxiety hits in. It's um it's just a really easier way for me to sell my art without having to step out into the world and go hustle it, wherever I'm trying, whatever booth or art fair or whatever. It makes it a lot easier, especially me not
yeah,
having to leave the house to do that.
yeah. And are there any platforms that you would recommend, like someone just starting out like you were when you first started out, like because it can all be very daunting and confusing. Well, what kind of platform do you think, because you've got experience of so many, what would be the best place to start, do you think?
I mean, I really was like, oh no, when voice ended, and I just didn't know where to go because there are so many to go to.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably hit an eighth of the market out there as much as I'm everywhere. Um, but I went to Object after Voice, and I will
Hmm.
still say they are probably my favorite platform. Just, it was a little hard onboarding, and I hope that they've fixed that by now. I've been with Object for quite a few years now. Um,
Yeah.
well, ever since a voice ended, I've been with Object. Um, I think they're really affordable to mint with. Um,
Hmm.
and you're not giving I mean, you can, you're not giving your NFTs away like some sites that, it's fun to be on because you can collect,
Yeah.
and that's nice, but you're not really making any money. You are getting your artwork out, but it's nice to kind of trade art with other artists. Um,
Yeah.
but you are actually making money on Object. And it's
Yeah.
not expensive to mint like it is on OpenSea. And I have been on
Hmm.
OpenSea for just as long as I've been on Object. I may have went there first. Um, but I still yet to sell an NFT on OpenSea.
Yeah, right. Okay, wow.
And it's
I mean, I suppose
expensive.
that's a,
It's
yeah,
expensive to mint
yeah.
there. Um,
And from what
and
I've
the other day
heard, they
I
used
tried
to
to mint
have,
one with
yeah,
Bitcoin. Oh my
yeah.
God, $204 to mint something. I was like, see you,
Oh,
bye.
wow.
As much as I wanted to
Oh,
be
that's
part of the
incredible.
Bitcoin minting, I just couldn't afford
Yeah,
it. I don't know. I don't know what kind of pockets these people have that are minting there, but
yeah,
it's expensive. Um,
yeah. And from what I've heard about OpenSea as well, I mean, a lot of platforms will allow you to have a royalties whenever your work sells down the line. So every time your piece of art sells, you'll get like, a 10% or
yeah,
5% or whatever royalty every time that sells. But I think, from memory, some artists are saying that OpenSea have cut that out. I don't know if you can put that in to the contract
I have it in my
when you're setting it
contract.
up, but you do. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you sign up with their, I think it's their basic contract, if you don't pay attention to the royalties part and change that, then yeah, you're not going to get your royalties, your secondary royalties. But I changed it. But they don't let you put a lot. I think it's just 10%.
Yeah.
Um, which I try to do 15 or 20
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people think that's
Well,
high, but
yeah,
it is what
but
it
it's good
is.
if you can do it. I mean, when you don't get too much for your art in the first
Yeah,
place,
when
then,
especially when
then,
I'm not originally selling it for that much, I usually put a higher royalty rate on it.
Just a quick intermission to say that the Fork in the Road podcast has a Patreon as well, where you get a whole bunch of special things. You get an extended hour-long advert-free things, like you get to ask the podcast guests questions. You get a blog where I deep dive things which, might help make you successful and me successful, because I'm learning along the way too. You can also chat with me one-on-one and talk about your art business and make it work together. Back to the interview.
and going from all your digital work, it translates across to, like, obviously you've got your book, but you're also doing a lot of physical products on Redbubble. I think you've got about 260 or something designs up on there.
I
How
need to
how are you
update it,
finding
but
that?
I'll probably delete a
Yeah,
bunch too when I do that.
yeah. How are you going with Redbubble? Because that's my main source I
It
mean, that's
works
how I do
well there.
print. It's 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 very hard to work out how to get it all, like the keywords right, description right. But one thing I've started to do, speaking of AI, is I'm using ChatGPT to write my
Description.
title of my work, and my description, and also all the keywords, because you get 15 keyword tags for each piece, and through ChatGPT, I say this needs to be optimized for Redbubble SEO, for people looking for this kind of artwork, blah blah blah. And I think that has definitely helped, because you create your art and then you go to put it in a place to sell it, and all of a sudden you need to describe it, and you need to come up with all these keywords and that. And as a visual artist, you can often be left completely, I don't know, if there's a cat in it and there's a dog in it and there's like, but it's like computers talking to computers. They know what they want.
I'm probably not using enough keywords because it's in my mentality with social media that we should use as few tags as possible. Uh, because when you get too many,
Yeah,
then it kind of gets a little jumbled. So I
yeah,
generally think I probably only use about 5 tags. So maybe I need to put more tags
yeah,
on my
yeah,
stuff. I really only sell cards and
yeah,
stickers. Cards and stickers. I'm like, when is
yeah,
somebody going to buy the canvas?
yeah, yeah. No, well,
The
actually, no, I have
shirt.
sold one. Yeah, yeah. It's, and the one problem with doing, I mean, it's really tricky. We live in a time where, you can have all of your work print on demand. You can have NFTs. You can do all this. You don't even have to touch for work. But the only problem is that everybody wants a piece of it. And by the time you're finished, you get a very small profit. Like from my Redbubble sales, if I sell a $35 or $40 t-shirt, I'll get about $4.50. And I sold a sticker recently, and so
You
like
get a
the
whole 30
sticker's
cents for that sticker.
$3. Oh no, I got about $1 surprisingly.
Oh,
But in terms of being a thriving artist, it is a tough road, and whether I need to be on more print on demands like Printful, which you can have for your artworks, and also Teespring for shirts and things like that. Whether I need to be across all of those, or whether it's effective, you need somehow some money behind you so you can actually go, okay, I'm going to buy a bunch of t-shirts, or I'm going to do that book run like with your book and say, instead of Amazon getting a lot of the money, you can print a box of books, but you've got to have that money in the first place to be able to like invest, and you got to invest in the right things that that sell. That's a tricky balance, I think. So
yeah, I think that is why the print on demand is so appealing. Whether it's the book
yeah,
or Redbubble or, it just makes it I'm I'm willing to give them my just take my little tiny portion for the ease of
yeah,
of
yeah,
everything.
yeah. I mean, the good thing is that one thing I found with a lot of artists is they don't ship internationally just because it's a complete nightmare. So whether you have print on demand for like you do have your physical prints in your country where you are, and then have like the print on demand stuff for overseas, maybe. I don't know. I'm
I
still
don't
trying to
know.
figure all these things out.
I keep wanting to do the NFT with the physical, um, but it's the logistics headaches that hold me back on that. I want to offer that, but I also like it's hard to be like in your NFT, oh, I'm going to offer the physical, but only to people in the United States. It just seems a little,
Yeah,
I don't know. It just seems like
yeah,
I know it
yeah.
has nothing to do with that we're better, but it feels
Mm,
like when I'm saying that we're better than but it really is just about the logistics nightmare that I don't
mm,
want to sell this piece, tell you I'm going to ship it to you, and I've taken an account that it's only going to cost this much to ship it to you, and I end up it's going to cost $100 to ship to you, and I'm out of my pocket for it. So
mm,
I really don't know
yeah,
how the people who offer their physicals with their NFTs, how they really go about doing that. I need to inquire
yeah,
about that a little more.
yeah. I did do one of my prints from Uncommon Animals. Actually, Dawn, Dawn, she purchased one of the prints, and so instead I did that. I created that as an original piece on Redbubble and kept it private,
Mm.
so other people couldn't buy it because it was a numbered edition, and I signed it and everything like that digitally, and that way I could print that and gift it to her from Redbubble, and that way she gets it delivered directly to her. So we don't have to send it all the way from Australia. And you can send framed or canvas or whatever.
Oh,
And
I didn't know you could do that on Redbubble.
yeah, you can keep them private and just do if you want to do a one of one or something like that, and then you can send it direct to them. But yeah,
Huh.
it's it's just a matter, but they still take
That's still not the
all
actual original,
no, no. And that's the hard thing with digital work, I find as well. Like, people who are creating paintings, you have the original piece, but when you're creating digitally, it's hard to sell that as a one of one because, who says it's a one of one, it's a digital piece.
Yeah.
But it also is an NFT which says it's a one of one piece. So I suppose you're relying on the honesty of the artist to say that this is the only time this has appeared. And you're buying that as a one of one. So yeah, it's
I do think there's a difference, because some people get a little bent when it's a one of one, and I've got it on my print shop, but I gave you a one of one for $5. It didn't give you
mm,
the artist's right to, I didn't give you my complete artistic rights with
it,
the $5
no,
purchases.
no,
I
and you
still
don't give
feel
them
like I
copyright
can
either,
print if I want to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, really, when you think back to more traditional styles as well, that's like, so you'll have the original piece that's hanging, a quite famous piece, which is hanging in the art gallery. You can still go and buy postcards with that
Yeah, you can
painting on
still
it, or you
buy
can
a
buy,
copy of the
or
Mona
you can, or you
Lisa.
can buy prints of it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
So,
yeah,
it's
I
not
don't know
the
why people
ownership of
get
the
so bent
original thing.
over this one. Oh, you can't sell it anymore, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tricky thing you've got to kind of weigh up in your mind from the beginning. I've kind of like weighing it up in my mind already deep in the process. And I'm going, what is a physical product? What's an NFT? How many print runs can I do without devaluing? But how many NFTs can you make of something without devaluing the value of that NFT?
Exactly.
It's you can lose yourself in that sometimes. and and I think you just got to keep making the art. How do you keep track of, because you must have across so many platforms and so many pieces of artwork that you have now. Do you have a database or something like that, because a way of keeping track of
It
what
is
is where
so
and how many
getting
copies
to
you've
where
got?
I'm starting to lose track of where things are. I used to could
Yeah,
really easy tell you where something was, but now somebody's like, "Oh, I love this piece. Where can I find it?" I'm like, you could probably find it on secondary at, and then I start going, oh God, where was this?
yeah,
So, it can be difficult sometimes. I'm definitely getting into this mode of where I'm like, okay, I cannot keep all these files. I just can't.
yes, that as well. Yeah,
Um, so yeah, a lot of it's in the cloud, but
yeah,
I do find hard times though. Sometimes I'll post something and I know it was from a long time ago. I'll just reshare it just to reshare it. It's sold.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but sometimes I'll instead of just putting like a simple little good morning with it and the picture, I'll be like, oh, maybe I should
yeah,
where this is at, and then I'll go, oh, where is this at? I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I'm just at that stage where I need to create a database and I need to know where everything is, because yeah, I've gotten to that point where I go, have I already minted this somewhere else?
Oh,
And
that's
on a
getting tricky
platform
too now.
that is
Mainly with
active.
the AI.
Yeah, yeah,
Mainly with the AI, because I'll sit late at night. I do AI while I'm watching TV. It's not a big
yeah,
to do like I'm doing my art, where I kind of just put on music and concentrate on my art. But
mm,
I'll sit there and I'll do AI, and then I'll be, oh, that's a good piece. And then I'll just kind of put it to the side. But I know it's a good piece, but sometimes I forget whether I've minted it or not. When I go
yeah,
back in, I'm like, did I ever mint that piece? And then I'll just have to go search all my platforms And
Mm,
yeah, is that gets a little tricky because you can sit there and do
yeah.
crazy amount of AI pieces in no time, and you got 30 of them sitting there, and you're like, did I mint any of these? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you make your AI work so personally recognizable? Like a lot of AI, I mean, because I've just started dabbling in it a bit as well, and I've got it my way that I make it a bit more feels like it's my personal style. But I can tell when I'm looking at a piece of your work.
Oh,
Um, how do you? I mean that just does that come down to maybe your style and personal taste? I'm not sure.
I don't
You
know.
just
I do like that you say that because I feel like there are some artists that I look at their AI work and I'm like, oh, we
yeah.
know whose that is, but I didn't think I had that
Oh, you
going
definitely do.
on.
Yeah. Hmm.
I was like, does mine?
Even when you're doing a completely different series, like you might be doing the Girls Can Do, or you might be doing like the ones where you've got animal heads on historic figures and stuff like that, but it's still got that same vibe somehow. And also the Drowning series, it's all got the same vibe. So you're onto something there.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fork in the Road podcast or watching the Fork in the Road podcast. For those people watching on Patreon, we also have it as a video on Spotify and YouTube. If you like the idea of chatting with artists, talking about how you go from starving to thriving, how you become a successful artist, whatever that means to you, whatever a thriving artist means. If you like this kind of thing, you can support the podcast in many ways. Apart from becoming a Patreon, you can just share it with your friends, or you could leave a review on iTunes. I think iTunes do review. Whoever does reviews, if you look in your podcast channel, if it allows you to do a review, or if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, please like. And I won't be one of those podcasts that go, you got to give a 5-star review. If there's something about the podcast you don't like, let me know. Write it in the comments and see if I can, tweak it a little bit to make it work better for everybody. But yeah, 5-star review would be pretty awesome. But anyway, check you next time.